Hey everybody, how you doing? Tekking and Barry here, and I would like to welcome you back. That's right, you back to a new installment of the GOTEI 13 Lieutenant series, and it's a great day to do it. It's actually relatively warm where I'm at right now. It's like 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Some of the snow is beginning to melt. I can walk outside without a hat on, but I should still probably wear a hat because it is a little chilly. Spring doesn't really start here in Pennsylvania until like late May, but we get a few bouts every now and then where it gets kind of warm for like a day. At any rate, I'm in a good mood, so let's talk about a new lieutenant. And it's funny, every single week I do these, and yet I always forget for some reason the next lieutenant I'm talking about, even though I just said it last week. Whatever. At any rate, let's see here. Well, we already talked about Shuhei. That was a fun one. I haven't talked about Izuru yet. That'll be a real laugh. We talked about Rangiku. We did Iba last week. Oh, that's right. So that brings us to MOMO Hinamori, the lieutenant of Squad 5. And so... oh, God. Whoa, okay. Well, at that one moment, I just remembered everything that happened to poor Momo in this story. Oh, wow. Okay, so, everybody feels bad for Momo, right? Like, everybody does. Like, she did not deserve all the stuff that happened to her, okay? At some point, Kubo sat down and decided, alright, if there's gonna be one character that's gonna be emotionally, mentally, and physically traumatized throughout this entire story, that's gonna spend a lot of it in a hospital bed, barely being able to grasp with all the crazy stuff that's going on in the world, that's gonna be Momo Hinamori. She was stabbed by Aizen, who was her former captain, who she respected. Aizen turns out to be a freaking traitor, and then stabs her right through the freaking heart as he was like, oh, come here, Momo, everything will be okay. I'm sorry I scared you. I know you thought I was dead. It'll be okay. Alright, just be quiet now. So that happens, right? And then the next time we see her, she's in a freaking hospital bed, bags under her eyes, very traumatized, talking to Toshiro, and that conversation sort of was going well until that devolved into her being like, well, it is really messed up that Captain Aizen did that. Oh, but it probably wasn't Captain Aizen. Toshiro, you need to figure out what's going on here. He might be a clone, or someone else has to be manipulating him. And then there was that scene where, like, she was, remember Yamamoto was talking to Toshiro? And then Yamamoto was like, you know what, Momo is here. She's out of bed finally. Her condition is beginning to improve. She would like to speak with you a little bit, so I'll grant that. And so the conversation's going. And then right when Momo starts going into, like, trying to understand, trying to figure out some way for her mind to grasp the situation around Aizen, someone that she, worked under and thought she knew and respected for, like, years and years. She's like, well, maybe, okay, Aizen did stab me, and he did betray everybody, but, he must have had a good reason. He must have been, like, manipulated by Gin or somebody, right? Like, there's gotta be a way. You gotta understand. And so, at that moment, Yamamoto just, like, does this, just... and then she just passes out again, like, oh, sorry, Toshiro, yeah, we thought she was, we're taking care of her, Unohana's gonna, bring her back to the medical division, we'll be okay. Oh, man. So then, she shows up again at Fate Karakura, which we think, like, okay, she's recovered, and at this point, she was talking to Rangiku, and she's kind of like, alright, I understand that Aizen is a traitor to the Soul Society. I understand what he's trying to do. He's trying to wipe out Karakura Town to make an Oken to kill the Soul King who we're trying to protect. I get that. Don't worry. I will fight against Captain Aizen. And, oh god, it's so freaking sad. It's sad because it's like, it's sort of real the way Kubo depicts this, right? It's just like, you're not going to be able to flip the switch so simply where it's just like, oh yeah, this is someone that I respect, and then all of a sudden just like, oh, he's an enemy? Alright, well, we're going to eliminate him. And yes, I understand the rest of the GOTEI, they felt betrayed too, like all the captains did, right? But they understood the situation right away that they had been had. Momo, being the lieutenant of Aizen for so long, felt like, okay, I know him better than all the other captains. I know him better than the other lieutenants. It has to be, there has to be some other angle to this that they're not looking at, right? So it took Momo such a long time to finally accept what really happened with Aizen. And even in that moment when she arrives to help out Rangiku against the Tres Bestia, Haribel's Fraction, she sets up that keto net. She was pretty badass in that fight. She showed up with Tobiyume, she set up that keto net, and they ran right into it, and it, boom! boom, blew him up and whatever. Her and Rangiku had a pretty cool tag team battle there, but it was a sad moment where she's still calling Aizen Captain Aizen. And Rangiku she notices, but she chooses not to bring it up, because, Momo is going on this spiel about, like, it's okay, Rangiku, I'm better now, I understand Captain Aizen is a traitor, it's okay, I'm good, we can fight now. And then Rangiku's like, I don't know if you even noticed, you probably didn't, but you called him Captain Aizen just now. So it's like in her subconscious, she's still holding on to that, because that's how she referred to him for years as his lieutenant, right? So, yeah. And so, if you think the trauma dial wasn't dialed up enough, then we have a moment where all of the members of the GOTEI are kind of gathered together. Momo gets taken down by Ion for a bit, so she and Rangiku are kind of being healed by Izuru and everybody. But all the captains, meanwhile, are fighting against Aizen after all the Espada have fallen, okay? So they're fighting Aizen, and everything seems to be going good. Remember the chapter where we actually thought the captains had an upper hand on Aizen? Where it was like, okay, they're all attacking him at once. Soifon's using her clones. Komamura summons the freaking Kokujo Tengen Myo. You got, Kyoraku using the shadow powers, everything. There was that bullshit moment where Soifon tries to use the 2 hits certain death, and she's like, 2 hits certain death. Aha! Aha! And then Aizen's just like, sorry, Soifon, but Shinigami battles are battles of Ryatsu and hair. And I'm sorry, my Ryatsu and my hair is just way better and way cooler than anything you have. So, yeah, you're 2 hits certain death. It could be 1 hit certain death. It still wouldn't work against me, because I'm Aizen, right? I'm on a whole new level here, and so that sucked. And so you got the moment, though, where Toshiro's in Daigoren Hyorimaru, and he's, like, just charging right at Aizen, like, gonna run him right through. And, look, Toshiro, not as bad as Momo, but Toshiro also gets wrecked by Aizen quite a bit as well, right? So we're like, oh yeah, I'm sure it's gonna be Toshiro that's going to get the final attack on Aizen. Toshiro's gonna be the one to run him through and end all of this. Not Ichigo, not Yamamoto, it's gonna be Toshiro, the one that got wrecked by Aizen the second he went into his Bankai back in the Soul Society, right? Just like, Aizen, Daigoren Hyorimaru! Done, right? So we're thinking that, but then you have the moment where we cut over to Shinji with Sakanade off to the side, and Aizen, like, realizes at the last minute, like, oh shit, it's all reversed. And, there's different translations for all of these, but I specifically remember the version that I read back then. Aizen was like, oh shit. Everything's reversed. But by the time he realizes that, BAM! He just gets rammed through this back with Toshiro's Bankai. And I'm like, holy crap, that actually worked! That actually made sense! Okay, cool! Toshiro did it! Well, he certainly did do it. He definitely stabbed someone. But it was Momo. Because as Aizen also describes, oh, that was so cute. By the way, Kyoka Suigetsu. Alright, so it doesn't matter if you have a Zanpakuto that can reverse things, or you have one that can freeze things, or you have one that can summon a giant, or you have one that can kill someone in 2 hits, or you have something that can control shadows or whatever. That doesn't matter, because I can mess with everything. I can make you think that you're fighting a freaking frog over here, and the frog is me, right? I could do anything with this power. So, Toshiro ended up stabbing Momo, who, they have a connection as well, because Momo basically viewed Toshiro as like a little brother growing up. She would always go by Toshiro and his grandmother's place. Little Shiro was her nickname for Toshiro, and then she eventually went off to the academy and everything like that. So they're like, yeah, had that kind of like relationship there. And so that was like, like Aizen knew what he was doing too, because Aizen the entire time, he's like, all right, I'm gonna use Kyoka Suigetsu to, find someone and just, like, swap out, like, the substitution jutsu from Naruto or whatever. It's just like, who can I pick? Oh, Momo's here. Oh, okay, well, I know what I'm gonna do. So he swaps out himself for Momo, and Toshiro runs her through, and then you just see the scene with her body there, and just the bags under her eyes, and the blood coming out of her mouth, and just like, little Shiro, why? Why though? Oh, and Toshiro at that moment was like, "Oh crap! Sorry, Momo. I didn't mean to. Blood everywhere. Oh man, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I'll freeze the wound. Oh man. Oh god. So yeah. On top of everything, that's like the cherry on the messed up sundae, is it not? Yeah, that's that. So she gets taken out of the battle. She doesn't die, thankfully. She doesn't die. That would have been just like, oh yeah, Kubo's like, okay, well, this character goes through so much trauma, and then Toshiro just ends up stabbing her thinking she was Aizen, and then she just dies. And that's the arc of Momo Hinamori. That would have been really messed up. But no, anyway, so she survives and she makes it through. And thankfully, now granted, I haven't read all of the light novel stuff, so there might be some more stuff there. But thankfully, at least for the rest of the manga canon, Momo seems okay. We don't really see her at all, or not very often during the Fullbring arc. If she does show up, it's not until like the last chapter of the Fullbring arc. But during the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, we see her being the lieutenant. She's still the lieutenant under Squad 5 under Shinji now, and that relationship is a lot more healthy. For one thing, Shinji isn't a duplicitous traitor, right? So, and I think Shinji understands more than anything, because Shinji was Aizen's captain back during Turn Back the Pendulum, and so he understands what it is to be betrayed by him and like his nature and everything. So I like to imagine, like, after the battle was over, after Fate Karakura was over, after Momo's wounds were healed, either by Unohana or Orihime or whoever, after her physical wounds were healed anyway, and after she spent a few weeks resting in the 4th Division, after Shinji and Kensei and Rose went back to the Soul Society and be like, okay, we'll be the new captains, so this all takes place during the 17-month time skip when Ichigo lost his powers. Eventually, I like to think that there was a meeting where Shinji, when he becomes the new captain of Squad 5, they bring him up to speed on everything that happened with Momo. And they're like, okay, here's the deal, Shinji. You're the new captain of Squad 5. We're reinstating your post as Squad 5 captain. And Shinji's like, yeah, I'll do that because, Aizen messed everything up. As long as you understand that we weren't really criminals, I'll come back. Kensei and Rose, they all resumed their positions. And they explained, he's like, okay, here's the deal. So your lieutenant, the current lieutenant of Squad 5, is a woman named Momo Hinamori, but she was the lieutenant under Aizen for many years, and so Shinji knew right away what that meant. Like, oh, okay, well, how bad is she? Just like, oh, well, Aizen messed her up pretty bad. It's so. I would imagine they gave Momo an option. Like, they were like, hey, Momo, if you want to retire from all this, if you just want to, like, leave the GOTEI and go and live in the Rukongai with your family, or, maybe do something, maybe not even be a lieutenant anymore, if you want to do another job in the Seirete, like, that's fine. That's cool. No one is going to look down on you or think less of you for that after everything that happened with you with Aizen, right? But Momo decided, no, this, I want to still be the lieutenant of Squad 5. This is still my division. And we don't really know anybody else in Squad 5, unfortunately, other than Momo and Aizen, other than, like, maybe some other random people that were, shown at, like, once in the story. But they were all betrayed by Aizen as well. So it's like, Momo's like, no, I want to still be the lieutenant for their sake. They went through pretty much everything that I did. He's like, okay, Momo went through a little bit more, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, I want to be there for my division, my squad. I want to be there for them. And I like to think there was a moment where Shinji sat down with Momo and they had a long talk about everything that happened. And so, Shinji talked about everything that happened with Aizen, with his past, and Turn Back the Pendulum and what he did. And just like literally the dude warped my physiology. Like, I am a visor now. I have hollow powers inside of me because of what he did. And Momo would explain everything that happened there. And so Shinji are like, you still want to be the lieutenant of this division. I'm going to be your new captain. we can do this, or if you want another task, I can put you somewhere else. It doesn't have to be a lieutenant job. And I think that Momo was like, that's kind of you, but I want to stay the lieutenant for my division, and everyone here knows me. And I think we can make this work. And so Shinji's like, okay. And then so it's just like, let's rebuild the 5th division together. Let's not let Aizen win here. Let's not let the 5th division fall into this state because of everything that Aizen did. We're better than him. We survived him. We can move forward, right? And so I think that's like Shinji and Momo stood up at that point and like, all right, let's do it. And so we don't have a lot of moments with Shinji and Momo throughout the course of the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, unfortunately. We get, like, I think one moment where they show up to help out Komamura with Bambietta, because there was that scene where, Shinji shows up with Sakanade and, like, warps Bambietta's, perception and everything. So we got moments like that, and they seem to have kind of, like, sort of like a quirky back and forth thing where Shinji pretends to, like, not really care, or Shinji's very jokey, very sarcastic. So Shinji will show up on a battlefield and be like, hey, it looks like you needed some help here, Komamura. Well, I was just passing through. I thought I'd stop by and lend a hand. And then Momo will be off to the side like, that's not true. We sensed that you needed help and we came because we're here to help you because we're the GOTEI and, we're all friends here. So that's like their kind of quirky thing there. Momo doesn't really have any major fight during the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, and that's unfortunate because, she has a really cool Zanpakuto, Tobi Yume, that's a Kido-based Zanpakuto that basically controls fire, or rather she channels her Kido into the blade to, like, fire, giant, Shakaho blasts or whatever, and she could set up, like, Kido nets, and she's an expert in Kido, right? And so, that would be really cool to see that again, and she does utilize Kido a few times throughout the arc, but you know what? She didn't get into a fight, or the fight that she did get into was off screen or whatever. Maybe in the anime coming up, we'll see maybe an extra scene where she gets involved in something. But at least she didn't get stabbed again, right? You know what I mean? Like, the first time by Aizen and then by Toshiro, it's just like, you know what, Momo? At least in the final arc, you didn't get traumatized or you didn't get stabbed by anybody, right? Okay, at least that's a positive. Okay, so that's good for her, all right? She made it through that, in one piece. So, and does she even go to the Soul Palace either? I think she does. I'm remembering a scene with her and Shinji during the Soul Palace, but it doesn't really go anywhere. It's the same thing like Shinji never really used his Bankai throughout the course of that. So Shinji, aside from that one bout with Herald Valkyrie, Shinji doesn't even really get a full-fledged battle in the final arc of this story. And so Momo's kind of always tagging along with him, though. But at any rate, Momo at the epilogue anyway, she's still the lieutenant under Shinji, and everything seems to be bright for the future moving on from that moment. So, yeah, certainly not a prominent character in terms of battles, but what Kubo, I think, was definitely going with Momo here is that trying to express the more human aspect of these characters, right? Yes, they are soldiers that fight for this military unit, but when it comes to something like betrayal, especially the kind of betrayal that Aizen, orchestrated, over the course of centuries, there's those that are going to respond with rage, like the way Komamura responded. There's going to be those that respond in a much more calm manner, like Kyoraku and Yamamoto. They were surprised by it, but they were all business. They were like, Aizen defected, okay, we need to deal with this. And then there are those that are going to respond with disbelief or trying to, like, justify some way, like he can't be a traitor, it had to be something else, right? And that are seriously going to be traumatized by that, as I said, and are going to take a very long time to get over that. And it doesn't happen right away with Momo. It takes quite a while. And I would imagine after the moment that happened with Toshiro, she was bedridden for even longer after that, right? But eventually she did fight through it, and she did get to a point where she can stand on her own 2 feet and she can be the lieutenant and she can help out with Shinji to rebuild the division. And it's probably a lot better now than it was when Aizen was running it, right? So I also wanted to go into, and I talked about this a little bit earlier, but a little bit about the flashbacks that we get with her and how she grew up with Toshiro and everybody. And that's the thing with Momo. It's like, she doesn't have a dramatic backstory or a really sad tragedy that occurred in her past. she has a sad tragedy in the present that occurred in the story, right? Her upbringing seemed fine, right? She grew up in a nice part of the Rukongai. She was friends with Toshiro and his grandmother, and she would visit them often and, you know, make them food and whatever. And then Toshiro would have that, like, little brother kind of like, you know, whatever, quit doting on me. And Momo was like, oh, little Shiro, you know, it's all good, you know. Well, your big sis has to head off into the Seirete to go to, you know, go to college, go to Soul Reaper College, so I'm not going to be around here anymore. And so that's kind of a nice, wholesome moment. And then she goes to the Reijutsu Academy. She's an honor student there. She's a freaking whiz when it comes to Kido, much more so than like Renji was. You know, Izuru a little bit. Izuru ended up working in the 4th Division for a little while. And then we have the whole flashback where Momo, Izuru, and Renji had that mission in the world of living with Shuhei. And then the Hollows attacked, also orchestrated by Aizen and Gin. And then Aizen shows up with his then Lieutenant Gin, and then they fight against them. And it was like Aizen at that moment was like sowing the seeds, right? He was like, oh, I'm going to show up and make myself look out to be this amazing captain that saved their lives, and they're going to look up to me with respect and admiration, and then they're going to be right in the palms of my hands. And so they were. And so right after they graduated, Aizen accepted Renji, Izuru, and Momo into the 5th Division. So they all started off in the 5th Division, okay? And then after Aizen got to know their personalities a little bit more, he's like, okay, so Renji is out. Renji is too much of like a wild kind of guy. He's not going to be able to be reined in as much. I'm going to send him off to, I don't know, it's the Rockies division. Send him off to the 11th division. And I'm sure it was like a really like where Renji shows up that day and he's like, Captain, what is this? I'm being reassigned to the 11th division. I'm sure Aizen spun some freaking golden bullshit there where he's like, Renji, I've been watching you for years. I've been watching your battle prowess. I think the 5th Division is just maybe not the place for you. Your place is in the Vanguard. Your place is in the 11th Division to train your strength so you can protect the Seirete even better. That is your duty as a member of the GOTEI. I will always cherish the time you spent in my division. I have high hopes for you, Renji. I believe in you. Just like, this is your mission now. You know Aizen spun some crap like that. And Renji was like, Captain, ever since you saved us back in the world of the living, I've respected you. You're one of my favorites. You're going to always be my first captain, but I'm going to go now and I'm going to train under Captain Zaraki. I'm like, you go, Renji. They probably even gave like a little going away party for him and everything. Momo and Izuru were there just like, oh, Renji, good luck. And then he's like, okay, now Izuru. Now here's the thing. Izuru also said he was a member of the 4th Division for a little while, so that means he spent time in the 5th Division, the 3rd Division, and the 4th Division. I don't know where Izuru got transferred to the 4th Division. I guess we'll talk about that more when we get to his video. But you know, Aizen was like, you know what? I think he would be a good pawn for Gin to manipulate. He might even be a good red herring in the future if we ever want somebody to like, oh, maybe he's the traitor. So he moves Izuru over to the 3rd Division under Gin, and then he needs a new lieutenant, so he's like, well, Momo. She's obviously the one that I'm going to be able to manipulate the most, so I'll keep her as my lieutenant. And she'll think that I'm so awesome and so great, and, you know, she's not even going to... Remember back when Shinji, like, knew that Aizen was messed up? Like, Aizen was, like, doing stuff behind Shinji's back, and Shinji knew that. He just didn't know to the extent. Shinji didn't know it was to that level with the Hogyoku and the visors and everything. You know, Shinji just took one look at Aizen and was just like, okay, you're kind of full of bullshit. I can kind of see that right away. But it wasn't like that with Aizen and with Momo at all. You know, Aizen was just like, she's not going to think that I'm going to be doing, you know, anything with the Hogyoku or, you know, being, you know, betraying the Soul Society or anything. She's not even going to think twice because she respects me that much, you know. So that was the reason he kept Momo around. And so that's the real tragedy right there. It's just like, my God. But, and there was the scene where she was having a trouble sleeping one time, and, you know, everything that's going on in the Soul Society when Ichigo and the Ryoka broke in, and so she shows up at Aizen's office, and just like, Aizen, I can't sleep, and just like, I'm sorry, and so he's like, oh, don't worry, Momo, come in, tell me all of your problems, and then you can fall asleep, you can stay here as long as you like, it's okay. And so, it was like a place of comfort for her, you know, to go to Aizen, you know, to her captain, whenever she was having problems or troubles or whatever, someone to talk to, and just all of that got ripped away. So she didn't deserve that. Momo didn't deserve that. My God. But Hell, like I said, she's better at the end of the story. By the epilogue, she's, recovered. So, maybe not completely. Like, she still might have nightmares from it. She still might always think of that for the rest of her days. But moving toward the future. And hey, ending out with that last, I'll pull that up for you. Just, I was rereading the last chapter of Bleach the other day. And so there's that one scene at the very end of the story when Aizen is remembering when Yuha was defeated. And I just realized that's kind of messed up that I'm like, remember, he's like, in order to remember Momo, remember that one quote that Aizen made that one time? But no, at the end of the story, the overall message was courage and hope. That's how Yuha's last vestiges were able to be destroyed by Kazui, Ichigo's son. Like that courage, that hope for the future. Even though Aizen was the one quoting that, that's kind of messed up. But still, that's the overall message here by the end of the story. And so moving on to, better pastures, I suppose. So yeah, that's pretty much everything. Don't know anything about her Bankai. It would probably be a very Keto-based, kind of Bankai, very similar to her Shikai, of course. Probably next to, like, if we're only talking lieutenants, so we're not getting captains involved, like Byakuya, who's obviously really good with Keto, and, like, Yamamoto. I would say in terms of lieutenants, the best ones that are good at Keto, battle Keto, like Hados, would be Momo, Rukio. When she was a lieutenant, she was good at that. Nanao is really good at Keto. Isane is as well, but that's more healing Keto, Kaido. But when it comes to the Hados and stuff, probably Momo would be the best suited for that in conjunction with Tobe Yume. But, yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and so now, who we're gonna talk about next? I don't know. Round and round and round the poster goes. Where it stops, it's right here. That's Cayenne. We already talked about him. Now it's starting to get difficult, because some of these characters are way in the background here. Alright, hold on. I don't know if it's upside down or not, so right here. Isane, we already talked about. Actually, no. That was more toward Marechio's wrist. So, okay, we'll talk about Marechio Omaida, the lieutenant of Squad 2, next time under Soyphone. So let's see what's up with him. He's more than meets the eye. He's more than meets the eye. Actually, Kubo tried to focus a lot on Marechio's development, I think, in the last arc of the story. Like, at first, it was just, like, some big oaf. Like, I'm the big tough guy that's stupid and eats a lot of chips. That's my character. But throughout the fake Karakura, we found out some new stuff about him. And then during the last arc, trying to protect his sister and everything from, like, BG9 and everything, that was actually pretty cool for his character. We got some new stuff for Marechio. So we'll talk about him next time. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Tekking and Barry, signing out. Later, everyone. Oh, poor Momo, though.